Hi, I'm Blair Brown.
And I'm Katie Dumont.
And we're interviewing Dr. Terrence Roberts. Dr. Roberts, how did it feel when you were walking into the school?
Well, the first day, we actually didn't make it in. We were prevented from going into the school because the governor called out the National Guard. The governor said, I don't want to have a desegregated school, which means no black kids, so they kept us out. So we were out of school for probably 3 weeks. When we finally got in, the first time, we were protected by the Little Rock police. That didn't work. We had to be taken out of the school about 11 o'clock that morning because the crowds were rushing in. And they were so vicious in their intent, they wanted to kill all of us, so we had to leave. Finally, the U.S. Army came and took us to school. Now, on that day, it was quite different because I felt really good. If you ever have to go into a dangerous situation, take the Army. It works.
Whose idea was it to plan this?
The school board, the Little Rock School Board. In 1954, the Supreme Court had ruled in the Brown case, Brown v. Board of Education, that it was no longer constitutional to discriminate against people because of color. So the school board, after thinking about it some, decided they would in fact obey the law. And they came up with this plan that would include grades 10, 11, and 12, only at one high school, Central High School, which was an all-white school in Little Rock. And that essentially was the plan. We all volunteered, by the way. All the black kids were volunteers.
As the school year progressed, did you feel more comfortable?
No, there was never a level of comfort, honestly. It was pretty tense throughout the year. The opposition forces were intent on retreating back to segregation. They weren't going to give up. And so they tormented us, harassed us daily for the entire year. In fact, at the end of that year, the governor simply closed down all the schools. The next year, nobody went to school because they were that opposed to desegregation.
Did you attend the school for more than 1 year?
No, 1 year only. See, I was a high school junior in 57. The next year I would have been a senior, but there was no school to go to. So at that point I moved to Los Angeles. And after I'd come out here and had been here for maybe 3 months, my entire family moved. So we migrated from Little Rock to LA. So I finished school at Los Angeles High School.
Did anyone out of the Little Rock time graduate?
Oh yeah. One of the group was a senior that first year, Ernie Green. And you may have, in your studies, come across the movie, The Ernie Green Story. Ernie was the only senior. 5 of us were juniors, and 3 were 10th graders. Now, 2 of the kids who had been in 10th grade actually returned once the schools reopened, and they did reopen the following year. They returned, and so 3 of the original group of 9 are graduates of Central.
Can you name all the Little Rock names?
I can indeed.
Yes.
Let's see if I can do it in alphabetical order. Now, that would be a chore. We'll start with Melba Beals. At the time, her name was Melba Patillo, followed by Elizabeth Eckford, who was a junior. Minnie Jean Brown was also a junior. Thelma Mothershed, Jefferson Thomas, Gloria Ray, Carlotta Walls, Ernie Green, and myself. I think that's 9. Should be 9.
How does it feel being a huge part of history?
Wow, that's a big question. It feels sort of weird at times, when I pick up a history book and see my face staring out at me. That was a shock the first time. And it still is sort of an interesting reaction I get. But I've come to accept the fact at this point that the 9 of us were involved in something quite historic.
Well, what were some of the violent things that the people in the mobs did?
The Violent things? Whoa. Everything you could imagine, they did. Everything that one human being could do to another. They yelled and screamed and kicked and spit and slapped and scratched. And, it was, they were convinced that they were right in protecting the school. And what they saw was they had to protect this school from being invaded by black students. That was their mission, to keep us out. And they felt they were so right in doing that there was nothing they wouldn't do, which made it really hard for us because we were targets, yes.
At that time, did you feel like you weren't going to get in, or did you know that you were going to get in?
No, there was no guarantee that we were going to get in. Those events played out over time because we were blocked by the National Guard. See, we had no recourse. And had the president not acted to send in the army, we wouldn't have gotten in. Absolutely not.
Do you think that schools ever would have been desegregated if this event hadn't happened?
I think if we had been turned away, it would have been pretty hard. That would have meant that something else would have had to have happened. Another school in the South or other parts of the country would have had to go through what we went through in Little Rock. So, yeah, I think it was that significant. Had we failed, then I don't know what would have happened. It would have been a very different course of history, that's for sure.
Well, I hope that doing this interview will help our students at our school understand the racism and prejudice.
Well, I hope so, and it's been my pleasure, and thank you, too, for inviting me.
Thank you for conducting this interview with us.
Okay.